Hi, my name is Miluska E. You can call me Millie. I am originally from Peru. I've been here for 28 years. And my profession right now is I'm a discipleship pastor in training, and I'm also a speaker.
Thank you so much, Millie, for being on our podcast.
Thank you for your invitation.
You came at the age of 4 with your mother. When you look back, what are some of the memorable things from your growing up as a child in the US?
Well, I have to say, I didn't know my story, my origin story of how I came. I knew the context of my mom crossing the border, but I never knew the specifics. I actually just learned that just very recently, a few years ago, and stuff. But I have to say, growing up as an immigrant, I definitely, first and foremost, I was an ESL when I was in kindergarten. So that was something I didn't understand because I'm like, hey, my prominent language is this. I knew I was from another country, but I never knew the difference, So, but then also growing up, I had to be that translator for my parents, as well. Like, they'll be like, oh, parent-teacher conference, but which at times I think would also be to my advantage, being honest.
Did you use that to, do a different translation?
I try to do certain different translations. I was always a good student, but always the complaint when I was younger is like, oh, she's so shy, she should participate. And I'll be like, yeah, she's just saying that I'm quiet, So it'll be like something like that, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And Millie, you finished your undergrad from CUNY Hunter College, double majoring in psychology and religion. And I was researching about you, and there was this moment in 2007, you said you gave up. What does that mean?
I did. So being undocumented here is a very trying struggle, I would have to say. And the reason is you don't receive financial aid, at least in that time. Now I know there's a different program, thankfully. But I had to work different part-times, off the books, babysitting jobs, tutoring jobs, you name it. And around this time, I was like, why would I get a degree if I wouldn't be able to even practice it, if I don't even have a hope for a work permit? And I have to say, if it wasn't for my mentor of that time, but then also the community of faith of that time that I was in, I wouldn't have persevered in actually continuing, because I did receive actually a scholarship from the church I was in that time that helped me provide for my studies, even if it was part-time. But it was a huge struggle. That's why I gave up, because I was like, why should I put myself a false hope of having a certain degree if I couldn't, have anything afterwards? Yeah.
But how did you regain the hope?
Yeah, regaining the hope, not ashamed to say it, but I did ask, as well, certain people to support me financially, and I received the help, which was so, to me, it was definitely not, it was completely out of the ordinary for me to even receive that type of help. And I think for me, receiving the help, the support, also the moral support with, like I said, my a current mentor I had in that time, it really made a difference for me to just press on believing, even though I may not see it, just believing that something better has to appear by the time I graduate. And I'm glad I did, because around the time I graduated, I was a January 2013 graduate. It actually happened, and stuff of the full-on blown of deferred action for childhood arrivals arriving literally when I'm already graduating, so I could apply. So it's things like that I think, grounded me a lot in just continuing persevering.
Right. You qualified for DACA program, which helped you to gain work permit in America. And now let's focus on your professional career. How did you navigate your professional career here?
Man, that is funny. And the reason I say that is because I had all the intentions to be a counselor. Right. So after graduation, I took, of course, my break, because I was always in part-time, full-time, in undergrad for many years. So I was like, I need a break from school. But then when I had the itch again, I really wanted to be a counselor. But unfortunately, because of my status, you can't get licensure at that time, which was around 2014, 2015. So even the school I applied, had to deny it, but not because of my, I would say perhaps maybe my status, but it's just also not wanting to give me false hope for licensure, and stuff. So, but that really disappointed me. And I guess for me, also in my crossroads of singleness at that time too, and also my faith experience and stuff, I really felt compelled to do what I did now, which is just go to seminar and just kind of like believe it forward, and just see where that would take me. I never thought that it would take me where I'm at right now, which is being a single woman pastor and overseeing spiritual journey of people in discipleship. I never thought that possible. Honestly, what I did think was my separateness of like, okay, I'm going to just do my master's in something I really like, which I really wanted to go deeper into Christian foundations. Right. So I did that, but I never thought that it would actually be my job, what it is today. Right. So I just continue, like, I would say, running away from this kind of call that I knew I had upon me to help people and support people. And I actually just did higher ed administration. So I actually worked for quite a few years in Hunter College, just helping with the different accounts there. And then from there, I went into enrollment management on a grassroots seminary. So you can see I definitely tried to not do this tier that I'm right now. But it followed me when I felt the burnout from the seminary that I used to work in. And I also saw, it was just so... It was just there, it was always present, and I knew I was afraid of it because I just didn't know what I would become with it, because I've seen unfortunately, many women leaders and also women pastors in general be very, as well worked out, very drained and unhappy and bitter, and I didn't want that to be my model. Right. And also I'm single, so I also wanted to have fun, and I know sometimes with people see you more for what you do than who you are. Right. And I think for me that was that wrestle of like, oh, I don't want to do it and stuff, but when I finally surrendered is actually when the opportunity came, and here I am, serving as a pastor in training in a church in Bed-Stuy called Reconcile Brooklyn.
For those of our audience who are not familiar with pastorship and a phrase you have been using, which is discipleship.
Yes.
Like if you could, elaborate more.
Yeah, sure. So basically, a pastor is a person who oversees people's spiritual journey, in their interpretation of God, and I guess in Christianity, it would be their interpretation of, who is God to them, who are they in God, and what is God asking them to do? Because, that's one thing too, is the challenge of how do you help your neighbor? So that's one thing in general that pastors are aware of, that they're pretty much partnering with God in helping people, I would say, in that context of the divine, dependence of the divine, but then also of like for them to do good, out of the good that they've experienced and the love of God that they've experienced, for them to do good, not only for themselves, but then also for others. So basically they do help people's spiritual journey, but also in their life circumstances. They're those counselors. And I would say more like pastoral counselors, because we're not certified, in that way. So that's in pastor in general. Now, when I said discipleship, it's basically people's growth on their knowledge of not only who God is in their lives, but also knowing their journey of like, what does it look like to know more about the Bible, the scriptures? What does the Bible say today that can help me ground my faith or the life circumstances I'm going through? And it's been really awesome because I get to learn people's stories. I love just hearing people's stories, where they come from, because it helps me see as well the complete, I would say, just how awesome, but also how, broad and it's just so massive, I would say, the heart of, a divine being, but also how each story, it actually, all of us are connected to each story, so to me too, it's great to hear people's stories or even their brokenness, because I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes sense why sometimes I would go through certain circumstances and I had no idea why. And trust me, I was doing, I was being, my little, goody two shoes, as some people may call me and stuff, but I was like doing the best I could, but circumstances would happen in my life out of nowhere and I would never understand. All of a sudden, years later, I'll come across a certain person and we're talking, and guess what? Yeah. They have the same story. And I'm like, that makes sense. In my mind, I'm like, man, it was because of you I had to have this story, or I had to have this wrestle. So it's things like that I have to say. It's my joy to say and partake in, just the different parts of also my story to actually share with others. But yeah, I feel like that's been kind of my tier. Yeah.
So Millie, would you call your current work, your current role as a pastoral resident, a career? Is that your career?
Yes, it is my career. And like I said, it's something I completely shied away from because I do know that, I had to also come to grips in saying that this is my career. I'll be accepted or rejected because of it, because I do understand people's understandings in general of unfortunately, of Christians today. Not all Christians are haters, in a sense of hating the other people because of what we hear the rhetoric right now with the Trump administration. So trust me, it's really interesting to also talk about my career and be like, but I'm not like that. Kind of give me grace, and mercy for this. Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey for it. And the thing is, it is a career because, you have to study in knowing, these different aspects, like I was saying, different foundations of the faith. Also knowing the scriptures, which are kind of our anchor of what it looks like to grow continually in understanding as well of God. And then you have as well the practice, which is where I'm at right now, hence why I'm a resident. So it's basically I'm in training with the lead pastor from the church I'm in right now, who has been an amazing support. Corey Morgan, I love him to death. He's been kind of like a mentor, a big brother, a father figure for me as well in this journey. And the reason is, he's definitely just seen I guess I would say my giftings and of hey, you can go ahead and create, you can go ahead and encourage people. That's completely fine. And it's great because it's awesome to say that I have, as I call him, a pastor boss, or a boss that believes in you, but actually really does give you the freedom for you to grow, in your professional development. And what is your tiers that you have been given. So that's one thing I have to say. It is a career, but definitely it's not a career for those that want to make money. If you put it that way, it's a passion career. It does take time to receive a certain, I would say, aspect of a salary, because just like any career has its union, its benefits. In order to do that, you need to be in the process of licensure, which I will be in the next year or so through the organization that helps and sponsors our church called Evangelical Covenant Church. So it's things like that I think many people are not aware. Pastors don't just receive salaries. It takes them time to actually develop into that person and also to receive different benefits. And the great thing is in this process of license and ordination, you do have to take other courses. You have to take a lot of professional development in order to be a good source of good, I would say, kind of like a spiritual advocate, and also kind of like a spiritual mentor and advisor for those that you are helping in churches and also the neighborhoods you're helping, being very aware of that, of different organizations, whether it be your same faith-based or not. So many things. I would say this is definitely a career, especially since I'm in a church plant. So that makes a difference. So a church plant is a new growing church. It's a new church that you start from the ground up. Thankfully, I entered already when it's been started, but still, because it's a new church, it doesn't have the other tiers that a church that's been there for 20 years has, So hence, I'm still building many things into place. And there you have to be an entrepreneur, So the church is also not only a place, of course, it's awesome for spiritual support, but also you have to build certain tiers like a nonprofit, of hey, what do you do for admin and communications when you receive a new person that's coming to visit the church? I also help out in a newsletter. So things like that, you still do. Even though, let's say, in seminary, they didn't train me for that, but thankfully I learned that through my other job. So it is a career, and especially the tier I'm in, like I said, church planting, which is establishing a new church in the neighborhood. You have to be very flexible and adaptable. You have to have adaptability in knowing that sometimes you're needed for certain things. Sometimes, you'll have some extended days, some not, because I work remotely as well and stuff, but also have self-care. Self-care is absolutely important.
How common is it to have women pastors? How common is it?
It's common in certain Christian church tiers, but it's not common in others. And the reason I say this, there's two different schools of thought. One of them is called complementarian, and the other one is called egalitarian. So these are two different understandings and view of women in leadership. In complementarians, they believe that, yes, a woman's a complement But there's also some tiers that believe that women can serve, but never be pastors. That's completely the tier for complementarians.
Okay.
Egalitarians, they believe, women, yes, are also a complement with their husband in marriage and church roles, but they do believe in women leadership in all tiers. So it's interesting because you do have still till this day certain churches that don't believe in women pastors, and let alone a woman single pastor. So it is, and that's why I could say it's common, but not that common, because not every single church approaches that in that way. I think I understand why people may disagree with it, like I was saying, because of their own interpretation of what they think women should do as a church role. But I also agree to disagree because I've seen that modeled as well. When I was younger, I've always seen women in leadership. So to me, it made sense when I received a call, even though I ran away, like I said, because of just not wanting to have that pressure of being seen for what I do. But I think it's awesome to also see it in that way because our world has changed too. And it's awesome for people to see that women can have this power and role, and steward it well. And also have fun, in the process of what it looks like to be a leader for a congregation. But yes, hence why I say it's common, but not common at times. Yeah.
What is the best way to reach out to you?
hopinggreatly@gmail.com.
Oh, great.
Yes.
@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you so much one more time, Millie, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's
Thanks
been a
so
pleasure.
much, Millie. Thanks you. And before we sign off, we would like to say thanks to the English Speaking Union, ARNIC, for providing us the space so that we could record the conversation with Millie. And if you are a new immigrant, you are based in New York City, definitely reach out to the English Speaking Union, ARNIC, because they provide free English language classes and professional development classes.
Yes, and please subscribe our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and also follow our previous episodes on our website, podcastattheendoftheday.com.
Yes, on that note, we will say bye-bye, take care, and keep hoping for the best.
Yes, that's awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.